So here we are, it's just after 5:30 in the morning and we're on our way. I've got an important meeting in central London today, so we're driving down to Rugby train station, which should be, well, hopefully about 2.5 hours drive, something in that sort of order, maybe 2 3/4 depending on the traffic. We'll be using the M6 toll road to hopefully trim a bit of potential time off. And then from Rugby I'm going to grab a train into London Euston and then grab the Northern Line. Would have been down to Bank, but Bank Station I believe is closed at the minute, so we'll be going down to Moorgate and then I'll be hot-footing it to my meeting destination. And this is fairly typical of what the E46 was used for, the car was used for prior to coronavirus lockdown. We used the car for some grubbier work, if you will, in Yorkshire, but thereafter it was sort of motorway trips down to Rugby and then trains into central London. This is the first time I've been in central London since the first lockdown. When was that? March 2020. Gosh, nearly getting on for 2 years now. All of my work since has really been done, or the work that I would have done in London has been done via Teams and Zoom, etc. And it's worked perfectly fine, but today's meeting's a bit too important for that. Today's needs to be face to face, and it's a measure of what we think of the car and how much faith and confidence we have in it that we're putting that sort of I suppose importance in the car's hands. It's not a new car. It's getting on. It's over 20 years old. In fact, it's 21 years old. No, it's not. It's 19 years old. Gosh, too early. Need some coffee. So it's 19 years old, and here we are, trusting the car to do its portion of the journey. It's probably the thick end of probably over 300 miles, actually 320 miles probably today. And no qualms, no questions, no concerns that the car won't get us there. So just got to settle into the drive. Heated seats are on, and we're comfortable. So it's a good opportunity as well today to give you some driving impressions of the car, what the car's actually like to drive on the motorway, some of the strengths that it has while it's cruising, perhaps a few of the sort of weaker elements of its dynamic performance. So I'm going to get on with the driving. Look forward to a nice strong Costa coffee. Other brands are available, and I'll give you a sit rep shortly. One of the car's sort of worst dynamic features, although it is something that has got worse in time, I don't know if you can tell then that the car moved. So out here we've got some quite deep tram lines where the trucks, or ruts where the trucks have sort of worn away the road. Hopefully you can see those. And when you get inside those with these wide 18-inch staggered wheels, the car tram lines quite badly. It's bad enough that actually you sort of move around maybe a quarter of the lane, and if you don't, the car will literally just sort of weave in and out of these tram lines. But it's quite disconcerting. I haven't tried the non-M Sport car that we've got in the collection, although to be fair, that car's also running 18-inch wheels, so presumably will tramline just as badly as this one. As I say, the car's always done this, but perhaps it's got, well, I don't know, has it got worse, or have the have the ruts in the road got worse, and that's how we're noticing it? I'm not quite sure, but it's something that if we were in the Safran or the Lexus, the LS400 right now, wouldn't have to think about these ruts. Both of those cars would just take it in the stride. But yeah, one of those things. There's just this stretch of motorway that lasts for about 5 miles where it does it. Once we get past this section, the ruts ease up and the tram lining tends to go away. So something to think about if you're test driving E46. If you can get it onto the motorway and test the car in those ruts, it's worth doing. Have you seen, by the way, the deals that are available on the brand new 7 Series, like this one here on the left-hand side? I can only assume that BMW are struggling to shift the metal, because a friend stroke business colleague of mine sent me through a sort of internet advert recently where they were advertising these for £749 deposit and £749 a month for a brand new I think it was a 730D long wheelbase. I don't, whether they're doing the deals on the hybrid ones, I've no idea, but certainly on the diesels it looks like they might be struggling to shift the metal, and yeah, they're doing some pretty attractive deals. You're allowed to speak as well, by the way. Do you want vanilla or vanilla? Medium. Oh, where's my card? Oh, it's not that minute.
What can I get for you?
Right, can I have a medium skinny vanilla latte, please?
Yeah, anything else?
And a large vanilla latte, but with the coconut milk.
Got anything for you?
And 2 of the egg, mushroom and spinach baps, please.
Is that everything?
Yeah, that's great, thank you.
Yeah, just bring it down then, please.
Okay, cheers. Looks like they've got the baps. Looks like they've got the baps. Shop. Ooh, we're gonna get our 8th coffee bean today as well. Free plant-based alternative. For God's sake, world's gone mad. Thank you. Pass the receipt to Treasury. That one. Perfect. Thank you. Breakfast. Mustn't get on suit. Mustn't get on suit. Right, so that's breakfast collected. Review of the egg and mushroom and spinach bap to come. Not had one before. Last time we were here they had run out. So looking forward to one of those. Oh, I got the wrong coffee. Right. This is what happens when it's 6:30 in the morning. I ordered the wrong coffee. Anyway, mustn't complain, first world problems and all that. So back onto the motorway and let's get some more miles under our belt. So sit rep, we're an hour in. We've just clicked over the 50-mile marker and we've just dipped under 40 miles to the gallon, mainly due to stopping at Costa for a coffee. We're at 41 to the gallon just before Costa. 39.3, given we've had to accelerate out of the services. Yeah, and we're doing well. Car settled into its stride, and we're just about to have some breakfast. Cruising cabin is your priority. There's no doubt an E39 5 Series of a similar age to this 3 Series would be the slightly quieter motorway companion. But these aren't bad. I mean, you've got to bear in mind this is an M Sport car, so it's got the sport suspension, it's got the wider wheels, the rear tyres are 255 sections. There's a lot of rubber on the road, and it's only a 35 profile, low profile tyre, so again there's not an awful lot of noise suppression there. But on a steady cruise, we're doing 70 miles an hour, steady, we're just overtaking a truck, but when we're not, actually in fact I'll stop talking in a minute because I've just realised rather stupidly that me talking increases the decibels, but generally which is pretty obvious really. But at a steady 70 miles an hour cruise, this car will generally emit about 80 decibels of noise in the cabin. So I'll shut up and just prove that now. M6 toll booth done. I'm always a little more careful. I'm always more careful these days. I once hit we've got a toll tag, and it means that you can drive up through the toll lane, the toll tag lane, and the barrier will automatically open. You get a little beep from the dashboard, the windscreen mounted sensor. The sensor in the barrier recognises the car, lifts the barrier. You don't need to stop and wind your window down and pay and all that sort of stuff. Particularly good in winter when it's snowing or raining and cold and you don't want to wind your window down. You just drive at the barrier goes up and you carry on. But I once, in the depths of winter, it was snowing and the barrier, for whatever reason, didn't recognise the toll tag and resolutely stayed shut. By the time I'd noticed that the barrier simply wasn't going to rise and hit the brakes, it was too late. Anti-lock brakes, and we hit the barrier and pushed it out of the way. Luckily the windscreen didn't smash, it made one hell of a noise, put a slight mark on the paintwork of the car. It was an E92 M3 V8 competition pack, so not a car I particularly wanted to damage. But ever since that, I'm quite ginger when I approach the barrier, just on the off chance that it won't or doesn't rise. But thankfully, no such problems today. We're an hour and Hour and a half? No, yeah, we're nearly 2 hours into the journey, so I'll give you a two-hour sit rep, I suppose. We've done 115 miles. We've averaged 39.0 miles to the gallon, which is pretty good. Well, it's very good for one of these cars, a 2.5 litre 6-cylinder petrol. And all is well. I feel comfortable in the seat. Whilst we've stopped for a coffee, we've never got out of the car, so 2 hours in the seat so far. Still feeling fresh. We've now got some daylight, which is good, and the traffic's still not too bad. So far so good. Things that contributes towards the nice, quiet motorway driving experience is the engine and gearbox package. The engine itself, super quiet, super silky. At motorway cruising speeds such as this, you simply don't hear the engine. You get a lovely straight six growl under load, but yeah, motorway cruising speeds and revs, the engine's just super quiet. The other one's the gearbox. This car's fitted with the 5-speed automatic gearbox, and this helps in 2 areas. One, the changes are silky smooth. You can't feel the car change gear usually, so it switches between ratios. The only way you can really tell is looking either at the rev counter or under load, a switch in engine tone. And the other benefit of the automatic gearbox is the long gearing in 5th gear, such as we're doing now, doing 65, 66 miles an hour. We're a little over 2,000 revs. A 70 miles an hour cruise is about 2,300 revs in the car, so nice long, nearly 30 miles per hour per 1,000 RPM in top, and that nice long gearing just keeps engine noise down to a minimum. Yeah, get in my way, rubbish Nissan Juke, block the sun out. It's the only real purpose for a Nissan Juke, and that's to block the low winter sun so I can actually see something. Of driving early in the morning in winter, look at that glare. Jeez. Wowzers. The sun shines over Rugby. So here we are at Rugby Station, safe and sound. Usual journey in this car. Smooth, quiet, relaxing, comfortable, no dramas at all. We've averaged, what have we averaged? Let's have a look. We've averaged 38.8 miles to the gallon, 330 miles worth of fuel left in the tank. Oh, 31.6 miles per hour. I forgot to reset that actually. Here we are, 8:07, ahead of time. Yeah. So yeah, it's just business as usual really in this car. It's as I say, it's super comfortable, super reliable, no stress, no drama. So I'll be grabbing the train now, so I'll grab my stuff and make the journey into central London, then onto the tube, and I'll see you all in a good few hours' time.
Next train at platform 4, 0846 Avanti West Coast service to London Euston. The train is formed of 10 coaches with first class accommodation at the centre of this train. It's first class accommodation at the centre.
joys of central London done. We're on our way home now, thankfully. Good meeting, but also glad to be in the car, heading homewards. Just thought I'd mention a couple of bits in terms of how the car is to drive, some of the features that you'd notice if you're going to spend a bit of time in one of these cars. First, one of the dials. You saw them earlier in the video, but they are super clear, which actually makes life really easy. You can just glance, a fraction of a second, and you know what speed you're doing. This sort of ergonomic design was one of BMW's best. Super clear dials, everything's where you'd expect it to be, everything falls to hand. Sorry, slightly distracted, we've got a new M5 passing. New M5 competition, no less, 21 plate, lovely. There's a few quid in one of those. Anyway, where was I? Everything falls to hand. It's really been well thought through. Nothing's more than a quick reach away. One of the things I do like, I can't remember whether, I think the E46 had these, but the air vents on the top of the dash, you can actually change the temperature of those independently to the air conditioning system, which is quite nice if you like to have, say, hot feet yet a cool face, or vice versa. So you set the air conditioning for whatever temperature you want, tell it where you want that temperature blowing, and then independently you can have this sort of top section of the ventilation system doing something completely different, which is quite nice. The other thing that makes driving quite easy on a motorway is the glass house. There's plenty of glass, and in particular the mirrors, the rear view mirrors, the side mirrors are a great size. You don't look ungainly from the outside, so you've got plenty of vision. No need for lane departure warnings here, just look in the clear mirrors. And the other thing, which this car doesn't have but actually does make a difference if you can find one, although you can retrofit these things, are the armrest, the central armrest. Say this car doesn't have it, it would make a material difference, I think. In fact, now I say that, I remind myself that actually I should probably retrofit one to this car. They do come up on eBay relatively often, and they're quite easy to fit, but a relatively rare factory option, strangely enough. So as I say, our car doesn't have it, but well worth searching out. But yeah, it's given that it's brief, when new, was to be a sort of sporty coupe. Yeah, it does do this sort of journey very well. Useful piece of consumer advice: if you're considering an E46 and you've never driven one before, just be aware that the sport suspension is pretty firm. The SE suspension, as you might imagine, considerably more compliant. You will notice going over things like cat's eyes, or if there are any sorts of potholes in the motorway or any road actually, that the suspension is really firm. This car doesn't have run flats. Oh yuck, look at that. Ugh. Who would order one in that colour? Sorry, that's the Mercedes, not the van. Gosh, that's a bit sudden. Okay, well, each their own. Although incidentally, Dakar yellow, amazing colour on an E36 M3. In fact, amazing colour on any BMW. That. Anyway, yeah, suspension firm on a Sport, not helped by the fact that the rear tyres are 35 section tyres. There's not an awful lot of sidewall going on there. Front's 40 section sidewall, not an awful, again, not a lot of tyre. So yeah, you do get a pretty firm ride. When the car's just driving down a relatively smooth motorway, it's not a problem. You'd never sort of find the car uncomfortable. It's only when you find, as I say, potholes, cat's eyes and sharp edges to the road, that sort of thing, that you sort of think, oh yeah, this is a sporty setup. But there's no doubt that an SE equipped car or a non-sport car would have a slightly more compliant ride if that's your priority, although you would be giving up some of the sort of super nice styling and wheels, etc. And you might have heard that ridge as we just went over the expansion joint. Trade-off having a sport model, apart from the exterior looks, so the trade-off internally, you get the super supportive sport seats, and these are really nice and comfy. There's no compromise here. You had an SE, in fact I'd even say the sport seats are actually comfier than the SE seats. You just feel like you're being held in them a little better. And I'm not even talking during spirited driving, just like we are now, cruising down the motorway. You can feel the bolsters just holding you in place, which is nice. And the other thing is the thicker steering wheel. The Sports have these sort of thick steering wheel with the nice M badge. This one's also got the multi-function steering wheel, so volume for the stereo system here, speech for Bluetooth telephone, scrolling through CD tracks. Over here we've got the cruise control, so on and off for the cruise, plus and minus for speed settings, and returning to a preset speed. But this nice thick steering wheel is really nice to hold, so between this and the thicker bolstered seats, it's quite a nice sort of package. It's not to say the thinner steering wheel on a sport model isn't pleasant, it's just the sport one's just that little bit nicer. The other thing in the cabin, although it's personal preference, this is that the Sports have the black headlining and A and C pillar trims. An SE model would typically have a lighter colour here, so either silver or creamy beige. It's quite nice to have those things. You'll see when I test the non-sport model E46 we've got, it actually brightens up the interior, but this darker black Sport, it's got flashed by a speed camera. That was quite startling actually. Yeah, car going the other way. Don't get me started on the smart motorways, but yeah. Yeah, so headlining, nice dark headlining, personal preference, but definitely changes the ambience of the car. One of the things, if you are considering an E46 as, well, more as a daily driver, it probably wouldn't be too much of an issue if you were just using one as a weekend toy or a show car, is the standard of the stereo. BMW did a few different options. There was the standard stereo, which this car has. There was a hi-fi speaker package. I can't remember how much that was. Hopefully I can post up a flash on the video and tell you, because I've got all the car brochures at home. And there was a Harman Kardon upgrade, which is well worth seeking out. As I say, this car's got the standard stereo, and frankly it's pretty rubbish. Our example has check that out, has a tape player. So yeah, if you want to live out all your retro do like actually, the motorised screen. So our car doesn't have a 6-disc CD changer, so you're left with either tapes or radio, but the speakers are pretty average at best. Sorry, just going over a rough section now. Yes, sport suspension as I mentioned earlier. So yeah, well, we're seeking out a car that's either got the BMW Hi-Fi package as a factory option or Harman Kardon. If not, plenty of aftermarket options to upgrade the stereo. We don't listen to the radio, so it's never really bothered us, so we haven't upgraded anything, but if you are a bit of an audiophile, then it's fair to say the standard fit stereo won't be doing the job for you. If, like us, you don't care, then it's not worth spending the extra money. There's the tram lining that I mentioned this morning. Look at that. Woo! Fabulous. Yeah. One thing to mention actually, the gearbox. So, as I say, this car has as I said earlier, this car's got the 5-speed automatic gearbox. It's an absolute blinder of a gearbox. We 99% out of 100 we have it in drive, just basic drive, but there are 2 other functions. The first being a sport mode, where you just push the lever across the gate. That introduces sport mode, which means later changes. The car will change gear later, it will hold on to the gears for longer. It'll also kick down sooner, so it's much more responsive to throttle inputs, and it also, which actually is a bit of annoyance, is it will lock out 4th gear. If we look at the dash now, we'll see that we've got the S next to the D, so that's sport mode next to drive. The car now, it sort of doesn't matter how, I'm only doing 60 miles an hour, but the car's locked in 4th. If I pop the car into drive again, it will automatically just change up to 5th gear. The other option, once we're in sport mode, is to push the gear lever forwards or backwards. We move it forwards, we change down a gear, so we're now in 3rd. Again, we're in 2nd. I haven't gone crazy, by the way, the traffic in front has slowed down. We're only doing 30 miles an hour now. I'm not in 2nd gear at 70 miles an hour on the motorway. And what that will do is lock us into a particular gear. So if you see here on the dash, we're now in manual mode. So we were in sport, and then as soon as we move the gear lever forwards or backwards, we're in manual 2nd gear. That will now hold 2nd gear unless I hit the rev limiter, at which point it will automatically change up to 3rd, or if we stop it will change down to 1st. So times you might use that if you were stuck behind an HGV or a tractor on an A road and you think, right, I am going to overtake this vehicle soon, and I don't want to waste time introducing kick down. You just go across into manual, lock yourself into whichever gear it is, and you're automatically in that, or manually actually, in that gear ready for an overtake, so avoids the change down, kick down times. Chances of you using that function, well, I don't know, depends what sort of driving you do, but let's put it this way, we've had the car for 3 or 4 years, and you can probably count the number of times I've actually used that function on 2 hands. So, but useful when it's useful, but probably not something you'd use every day. One thing the gearbox does do, I mean, this sort of this is ideal. This is ideal for an automatic gearbox. None of the clutch pumping, this, that, and the other. Just makes this sort of driving so much easier. That sounds incredibly lazy, doesn't it? But yeah, it just does. Do like this gearbox. You'll probably find, if you're looking for one of these cars, that depending on what model you buy, the auto gearbox will come at a premium. I say depending on which model. I would say a 325 like this, and certainly a 330, there's definitely a market for the 6-speed manual cars for people who want a slightly more enthusiastic drive. But when you're looking at a 320, well, sorry, a 318, a 320, or a 323, you probably find that the autos are hugely popular, much more popular than a manual gearbox. And then on a 325 and a 330, 50-50, just down to personal preference. One gearbox to avoid on an E46 is the SMG. I know it. SMG gearbox M3 owners now will be scoffing at the screen, but I speak from experience. Just by way of example on how smooth these engines are, and we're now doing 45 miles an hour. I'm just going to pop her into sport. Never called the car her. Anyway, it into sport mode, and we'll have a stab, and you'll see just how little, hopefully, you'll see just how little vibration there is. Silky smooth, silky smooth. Find a better section to let the car have its head. It sort of doesn't matter what revs you're at. If you were to turn the stereo up, not in this example, because it's got standard speakers, probably not a particularly pleasant experience, but if you were to turn the speakers up to a point where you can't hear the engine, you wouldn't be able to tell what revs the car was doing. So whether we were doing 2,000 revs just cruising, or we were at 6,000 revs 500 short of the red line, you honestly wouldn't be able to tell. These engines are that smooth. You might be able to tell on the fuel economy though. But yeah, you certainly wouldn't from a vibration perspective. They also sound lovely, which hopefully we'll get a chance to show you a bit further up the road when this traffic dissipates. Just said the word dissipate on camera. Sorry. One thing to note is that, and this is particularly prevalent if you're used to modern cars, and by modern cars I mean the sort of downsized turbocharged engine cars that we've got these days, is that despite the fact that the 6-cylinder 3 Series cars were billed as sporty versions, they're not particularly talky by modern standards. It's no real chore because the engine is so turbine smooth, silky smooth all the way through. It's not a chore to rev the car. But if you do want to make spirited progress, generally speaking, you do have to rev it. So even though at a 2.5 litre engine, the 325 is deemed a sporty car, was deemed a sporty car, the mid-range torque isn't suppose, modern standards. I'll probably have to correct these numbers now, but I think the 325 had a top speed of 149 miles an hour, which is quick by modern standards, no doubt helped by the slippery shape. 0 to 60 in the 7 to 8 second bracket, so upper 7s, maybe 8 seconds on this auto gearbox. Again, respectable, but the in-gear flexibility does require you to change down. That's not particularly helped by this car having the 5-speed automatic gearbox. So if I show you now, I'm going to lock the car in 5th gear using the manual mode, and we'll use full throttle. So manual, change up to 5th, doing 55 miles an hour. If I use full throttle, 60, 65, and 70. So yeah, it's not a slow car by any imagination, but the engines do like to be revved, particularly once you get past about 4,000 to 4,500 revs. The engine really sings and you get that silky turbine smooth sort of howl towards the red line, which on this car starts at 6,500 revs. But just something that might, if you've never driven one of these cars, and if you've never driven a car of this era and all you've driven is modern turbocharged engines, you might jump into one of these 6-cylinder 3 Series and yeah, wonder where the mid-range performance has gone. I'm used to it, so. So here we are at pretty much at journey's end. Just got a few hundred yards to go to get back. Stuck at a level crossing, and I feel fresh as a daisy. I've had longer stints in the car than this, but been driving for 6 hours. Feel absolutely fine. Could easily do that again without issue. Unfatigued. Car's performed superbly. MPG for the day 37.1, which for a 2.5 litre 6-cylinder petrol car is pretty fine. As I've said in a previous video, the car always does over 30 miles to the gallon, and usually on a motorway run we're somewhere between 35 and 40. Today being no exception, pretty much slap bang in the middle of what the car usually does, which is an exceptional performance. And yeah, I look forward to the next time I jump behind the wheel. I will do a driving impression video of the car on other sorts of roads, so on sort of A roads and around town. I'm conscious that today we've really just done exclusively motorway mileage, so we'll do something that's a bit more mixed, and I look forward to posting that up soon. But thank you for watching this video and supporting the channel, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.